I've been wanting to make this video for some time now. I've got my VF8 back from the service center in VinFast. After TED, I have the firmware version number 8.7.6. And this video is about my review of that particular firmware. And I want to show you all the improvements that they have done to the software, as well as the performance changes, if any, due to this firmware. Let's get into it.
Hey Tom, it's the one and only Floyd Money Mayweather. First I want to say congratulations on your YouTube channel. Everybody needs to follow your YouTube channel. So what everyone needs to do is subscribe to Tom Peng. Great guy, great person. Tom, keep up the great work.
Alright, so this is a video that I've been wanting to make since I got the car back from the VinFast service center back in February. After I came back from Canada and I received this car back. And if you look at the display here, if we go to settings and go to the information here and look at firmware, you can see that we're currently running VinFast firmware version FRS 8.7.6. This is supposed to be the latest and the greatest, although I've heard that they have released subsequent versions after this. I believe as of this filming, the latest version is 8.7.8. So this review is about this particular firmware version. So let's start with the obvious changes, all right? So if you look at the left side here, you will notice that there's no longer a way to open the front trunk from the display. And there's no way to lock or unlock the electric charging door from the display console. And I believe the reason for that is because people accidentally open the front trunk, or people lock their electric door and they can't get access to it to charge the car. So I believe, this is only my speculation, but I believe that VinFast decided to remove those two features from the software so that you can't possibly make a mistake here and accidentally open your front trunk while you're driving, or lock yourself out in the event that you want to charge your car. And so today, if you want to open the front trunk, this is what you have to do. You have to go down here and find the handle here and pull, and then you can open the front trunk. And the electric charging door is always unlocked so that you'll never lock yourself out. Now I want to start with some of the negative things that I found with the version 8.7.6. Not because I hate VinFast, I have to continue to reiterate that this is a review and I'm gonna point out the positive and the negative, in my opinion, from my observation. So you VinFast fanboys, calm down, okay? We're gonna start with some of the negatives, all right? So one of the first things I've noticed with the software is that the trip computer is no longer accurate. Let me show you what I mean. So we go to the trip counter here. As you can see, in the last 3 months, I put about 2,300 kilometers on the car. And according to the trip calculator, I'm using only about 3.5 kilowatt hour per 100 kilometers. And that's obviously not accurate. And in my most recent trip, 87.5 kilometers, I have an average power usage of 3.5 kilowatt hour per 100 kilometers. Obviously not correct. So in this latest version of the trip calculator, the power usage is completely wrong. And notice that the software keeps kicking me out of the trip menu, right? I don't know why it keeps on doing that. I assume that, it's because of the errors that come up. Whenever an error comes up, it will refresh the screen, which is very, very annoying. And the other thing is that I don't know if this is unique to my car or this is common to most VinFast VF8s out there. there's a lot of error messages, and they're like phantom error messages. They keep on popping up. It could be about anything. It could be about the camera. It could be about the lighting. It could be about the sensors. It could be about anything. There's just random errors, like the child seat safety, seating thing, sensor. All those things could trigger an error, and there's constant errors being displayed on the screen. I don't know if this is something that's unique to this car, or this is something that's common to all VinFast VF8s. And if you own a VinFast VF8, comment below. Let us know if this is happening to you as well. But I'm seeing a lot of errors, and these are phantom errors. They're not real errors. There's actually no error with the car. So my assumption is that there's many different computer modules in the car, and they're not communicating with the computer very well. And the communication between the modules and the computer, there's some problems there. So let's talk about some of the positive things that happened with version 8.7.6. The first thing I've noticed when I got into the car is that now I see Apple CarPlay and Android Auto are now available. And this is fantastic news, especially for me, because I don't really like the map that comes with the VinFast VF8. It's powered by here. And although I've gotten used to it, I'm starting to like it, but I still think that it's not as good as Google Maps. And now with Android Auto, I have choices. If you have an Apple phone, then you get Apple Maps. If you have an Android phone, you get Google Maps. And I just think that the Google Maps functionality and accuracy is superior to what's available on the VinFast VF8 powered by here. And let me just show you how it works. So let's go to Android Auto, and you have the option of connecting to Android Auto either via a USB cable or by Bluetooth. And right now we're actually connected via the Bluetooth, and this is actually being fed from my phone, and it's actually very responsive, as you can see. And let's recenter here. And the benefit of using Android Auto is that you get Google Maps, and you also have access to plethora of Android apps. So any apps on your phone that is Android Auto friendly would show up here. So for example, I have Maps, I have Messenger, so I can actually get notification and also read my messages. And I also can access the phone like this, and my contacts and my recent calls, get my calendar, get the weather, and my company internal Microsoft Teams. So anything that's Android Auto compatible on the phone would show up here, and I can actually access that through my display here. So having Android Auto is actually very, very useful, and Apple CarPlay. You have the options of the maps and the apps that come with VinFast, or you have the options of maps and apps that are on your Android or Apple phones. Now with firmware version 8.7.6, you also get, finally, the beginnings of driving assistance. So I have demonstrated already the ability of the VinFast VF8 to follow the lane on the highway. I wouldn't try that in regular traffic here in Ho Chi Minh City, because I don't think the computer is ever smart enough to handle the kind of traffic that we have here in Ho Chi Minh City. But on the highway, the VinFast actually follow the lane very, very, very well. And I feel fairly confident in using that feature on the highways, even here in Vietnam. Now, that is the first driving assistance feature available now in the software. There are more coming, including assisted parking, and I'm looking forward to those features. When those features are available in the software, you can expect me to show that to you. Now, getting back to one of the negatives about the VinFast firmware, and that is it doesn't remember very much of my last settings. For example, every time I get into the car, these are the things I have to do. I have to go into the driving mode. I have to set to sport. I have to set to the regenerative braking to low, because it will not remember my last setting. So every time I get into the car, I have to do that. Another thing that I have to do is I have to go to the driving aids. I have to go to lane settings, and I have to turn this off, all right? Because this might be a great feature elsewhere in the world, but in Vietnam, this feature is actually kind of dangerous, because if you set this to, say, emergency lane keeping, the car will actually take control over from you. It will try to keep the car in the lane for you, but you know how people drive in Ho Chi Minh City. This would not be a very safe feature. So I trust myself over the computer significantly much more so in regular traffic here in Ho Chi Minh City. So I always have to turn this off. Unfortunately, the firmware does not remember my last setting, and therefore I have to do this every single time. So it would be great if VinFast can remember my last setting. Just like how VinFast remembers my last seating position of my seat, although it doesn't always work because it remembers sometimes, it doesn't remember other times. I think it has something to do with the sequence of, getting into the car, putting your code, pressing the brake pedal, and it's a combination of those things. If you do it wrong, then it will not adjust the seat for you. So again, this is a software issue. I think these are things that can be optimized. Definitely, I want the car to remember my preferences so that I don't have to put it in every single time I get into the car. Well, now that I have charged the car up to 97% right here, and we can get on the way, and we will do the rest of the review on the road, and that should be fun. Okay, so we're getting on the way using Google Maps on Android Auto to navigate.
Turn left.
Turn left. Notice that there is actually a lady speaking British English giving me directions, and that's actually a good thing. I will tell you why later. So as you can see that the Android Auto and Google Maps works perfectly, in VinFast. So right now I'm using the native navigational computer, the navigational map in the VinFast VF8. So this is powered by here. And I just want to show you something really, really quirky about the native navigational map. This is not Android Auto or Apple CarPlay. This is the native navigational map. I already set a route, so it's actually going to take me to the airport. What I want to show you is that in Vietnam, when the navigational computer is giving you directions, it's actually speaking in a Vietnamese accent.
After 350 meter, turn left onto đường Dinh Tien Hoang.
I don't know if you heard that, but it says after 300 meter, meaning after 300 meter I have to do something. And it is actually Vietnamese English. It's a mixture of English and Vietnamese.
Now turn left.
Now turn left.
After 1 kilometer, continue straight ahead onto đường Ô Thị Sau and turn left.
After more kilometer, more is like 1 kilometer.
After 250 meter, turn left towards cầu Hoàng Hoa Thám.
Right, so as you can see, this version of the software, which is for Vietnamese vehicles, speaks Vietnamese English, and it's a mixture of English and Vietnamese. The numbers are in Vietnamese and English is in Vietnamese English. So I assume in North America you would get navigational computers speaking native English, like American English. But in Vietnam, I get this Vietnamese English computer speaking to me, and it's not a problem because this will only be discovered by a very few people here in Vietnam, probably just me. It will probably only affect a few people like myself, but I certainly hope that they did not ship this software to North America.
Now turn left.
Now turn left. So now let's test the performance of the VinFast VF8 with the firmware 8.7.6. Does the firmware actually improve the performance of the vehicle, or does it actually degrade the performance of the vehicle? So let's put that under the test. In the past, we do this test rather unscientifically, but this time I have the help of a device that will help me accurately measure the 0 to 100 km per hour speed and time. And that device is the race box. Let me show you. So this is the race box that I have mounted to my VF8. And with this device, I can measure many things, including lap time. So if I'm on a racetrack, I can measure the lap time. If I'm going to measure the time to get to 100 kilometers an hour, I would use the drag meter. And this is what we'll do today. Of course, it has a history of all the tests we've done in the past and settings. This is actually a fairly accurate device because it has a 10 Hertz GPS. So every tenth of a second is taking a measurement. So the accuracy of this device is actually quite good. Maybe as good as plus minus 0.1 seconds. And we're gonna put this device to the test. And I actually acquired this device from overseas, and you can't acquire this device in Vietnam. And if you are a car enthusiast, if you're into performance measurements of your performance cars, if you're an enthusiast, this is a device you should consider getting. Let me show you how it works. And also we're gonna test the performance of the VinFast with the new firmware. So I just want to show you that it took about 5.72 seconds to get to 100 kilometers per hour. So I don't know if that's actually an improvement, because VinFast actually advertised a time of 5.5 seconds to get to 100 kilometers per hour. And today we did it in 5.72 seconds. And in the past, we have actually done this test and we got 6.1 seconds. So I would have to say that actually the performance slightly improved with this latest firmware version. Let's do this test again. Okay, so get ready, set, go! .61 seconds to get to 100 kilometers an hour. So I'm happy to say that VinFast 0 to 100 kilometers an hour time is actually very close to advertised with the firmware version 8.7.6. So I would say overall, firmware version 8.7.6 is a hit and miss.
Now turn left and then turn left.
So the plus of version 8.7.6 is
Now
that
turn left and then turn right on go to our fans and room.
now you get Android Auto, and you also get Apple CarPlay,
After 200 minutes to turn right on to our Lamson and then turn right.
and they work very well. Let me just turn that off, okay? So you also get the initial software for the driving assistance feature, and it works also very well. The software still appears to be buggy. For example, the trip computer does not calculate the power usage correctly. There's constant errors being displayed on the display, even though there is no problem with the car. So it probably has something to do with the modules that are not communicating with the computer very well or correctly. And generally, I would say the software needs further improvement because it also does not remember your last settings. And that can be very annoying when every time you get into the car, you need to set your settings. For me, I gotta set into the sport mode. I gotta turn regenerative braking to low. I gotta turn off the lane keep assistance because that can be very annoying in Ho Chi Minh City. And the seating, the seat adjustment don't always work. So even though it's supposed to adjust to your setting after you get in the car, it doesn't always work. So sometimes when I get into the car, I have to manually adjust the seats as well. It would be great if the car remembers my last settings. There's actually one other issue I have with this car, and I think this is an issue that's only for this particular vehicle, not for all VF8s. And that is, after I put this car into service and I got it back, I noticed that the steering wheel is no longer center. All right, this is crazy. It's kind of slightly to the right, so I have to keep slight to the right in order to go straight. For most people, they probably won't even notice it. For me, it is very annoying because I'm very sensitive to the steering wheel being in the center, right? So being center aligned. But this car is slightly off after the service center trip. I believe they're trying to do something with their signals, and they probably did something and they just didn't keep it centered, which is actually unfortunate because I have said in the past that this car has very good steering and has very good steering response, and not being centered kind of ruined that dramatically for me. So it's not important enough that I need to take this car back to the service center immediately, but this is something that I will bring up next time when I go into the service center. I will tell them about this, and hopefully they can do something about this. So all in all, I think 8.7.6 is hit and miss, and I think VinFast is doing a good job in continually improving the firmware, and I do have confidence that in the long run that they will address all the software issues. As VinFast continue to release firmwares, I will continue to talk about them, all right? And take some fucking action and try out the latest firmware from VinFast, and don't be a fucktard.